Well, here we are again, viewers. It's our British Business Podcast, and I'm delighted this morning to have two fantastic, amazing people. We've got the Professor Paul Cadman, thank you very much for coming in, and Dr. Richard Fallon, thank you for coming in today. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off in the usual fashion to ask our guests just for a little bit of biog, just to find out a little bit about them so you understand who it is that's coming in today. Paul, could you start off?
Good morning. Thanks very much for having us this morning. Absolute privilege to be involved. My background, we don't really have long enough to tell you everything I do, but I'm going to have a couple of minutes snapshot at where I am now, where I've been and how I've got here. And my journey, I think, is particularly poignant to some of the business leaders who are out and about today. So my background, heavily dyslexic, come from an inner city and left school with no qualifications at all to go through into the fire service, spent some time in the fire service, 20 years, played rugby at a very senior level, some martial arts and things like that, which created the discipline which I use in business on a day-to-day basis. Professor of Entrepreneurship at Birmingham City University, sit on a number of different boards, business-wise and things like that. I'm a paid non-exec. I'm a director and investor in some technology, manufacturing, transport design companies is the background. But my passion in life is supporting businesses, giving people opportunities, looking at succession planning and things like that. But really a driver for me is charities as well.
Wow. Dr. Richard, follow that.
Hello. That's a tough act to follow. Very tough act to follow. So a little bit about my background. I did my PhD in laser physics back in 1998, and my work appeared on Tomorrow's World, if you remember that.
Wow.
And I got to put an optical fibre sensor into the mast of a yacht. But literally during that period, I worked in an underground lab on my own, seeing neither people nor daylight. And I like both of those things. So I left there and went to work for British Airways as a business analyst, got to travel the world at 90% off, which was great, really enjoyed that. Some stories around that I don't have time to tell you. I then moved back to Birmingham to do business analyst at senior level. 2004, set my own business. Did a lot of consultancy work with a range of clients and got very much into marketing. A few years ago, my PhD group had a reunion and said, we've got loads of funded support to help companies, but we're really struggling to engage with them. Can you help? And I said, sure. And that's how we got into the technology supply chain. And obviously through that, I thought, who's the most connected person in the West Midlands? I know, and that is by a very, very long way, Professor Paul Cadman.
Fantastic. What a great introduction. I know the viewers are going to absolutely love this morning's podcast, so thanks for coming in, guys. So to kick us off, if you wouldn't mind, I think we're going to focus in on and drill down two different areas of business that you guys are involved in. First of all, how's the pandemic been for both the businesses?
Both businesses have been particularly good. So technology supply chain is all about connecting individuals, companies, supporting and things like that. And so the better way of explaining the technology supply chain, the Richard will reject to this, but imagine a growth hub on steroids. So the person who answers the phone is a highly skilled, professional and knowledgeable type of person, not that somebody needs to refer somebody to. So you'll answer and you'll deal with the right person at the time. So some of the projects that we work on has been really supportive to companies through the pandemic. So at the time, all of the companies just stood still with shock. Who are we, what we're doing, where we're going to go, how we're going to continue doing what we're doing. And it was around reshaping innovation and it was business support. Some of it finance, some of it was reshaping around the financial structure, and some of it was around professional guidance. So bolstering a board up maybe of non-execs and things like that, consultants to come in that have got specialisms around what needs to reshape the business around. So for us, the technology supply chain was being particularly good through the pandemic. We don't like to say that, and it's unfortunate that that we can pin our colours to the mast around that. But the technology supply chain has flourished particularly well through the pandemic. But Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. What we found is probably before the pandemic and COVID, I would say we did a lot with manufacturing and engineering companies. Before that, maybe 20% really wanted to innovate, and 80% were happy going along as they were. Since COVID, that's pivoted, so it's now about 80% really want to change things. So that's really allowed us to help people kind of automate processes, find grants, get the support they need to move forward. And we're seeing another rush now with obviously the surge in energy prices and the cost of raw material going through the roof. We're getting asked more and more for support on going, okay, what support is there out there to help me kind of like reduce my costs, boost my productivity? How can I get grants for new equipment? So there's a real push for that at the moment. So it's interesting times.
And through that pandemic, it sounds like, although it was kind, I think, did you say a word? So it wasn't catastrophic as it was for a lot of businesses. In terms of engaging now, we're hearing from the marketplace across a number of sectors that actually people are now starting to engage face to face again. How did you cope with the Zoom period of time, that daily conversation, which you know was going to be all about the shorts below the tabletop and the suit above? How did you cope with that? How did it impact on your business? Did it help?
For me, it was totally fine. So I've always worked internationally, so I've always used some form of Skype, Zoom, Teams and things like that. So I've been fairly used to that, and I've taught around that, and I've managed projects around that. In the car industry, we used to work 27 hours a day, 8 days a week. Sounds a little bit bizarre, but we'd have simultaneous projects working around the world. So it'd be 8, and an overlap of different hours. So we'd run around time zones. So we'd deliver projects, a 6-month project in probably 4 or 3 months occasionally. So the mindset of bringing data, bringing people together, different languages, different cultures and things like that has been fine to me. So I was happy working at home. One of the best rooms in the house is my study. So I'm all right there, and I'm a day or two a week. I can go into university. We've got a couple of offices that we work from and things like that. I was all right. So what happened to me was I didn't realise why everybody else wasn't all right, why it broke down for other people, why they struggled, the mental health and things like that. So productivity may have gone up, and the employers, the boards, may be looking at factual sheets of productivity going up, but they're not measuring the mental health, and the decreasing of mental health and where they are, the toll on the staff. And we still don't know that. The academics are putting out papers and things like that. It'll be a few years before we get to grips finally with that. So the answer to the question is fine for me, but I did see issues around, locally, nationally and internationally.
Richard?
It had an interesting impact with the technology supply chain. What we'd done before COVID was we ran a lot of live events and we'd do a lot of workshops. And what we found is moving to Zoom, it wasn't the same because you can't network the same. What we also found is for events we'd have a range of speakers and people would usually come for one, but they'd like the others and stay. The problem we do with Zoom is people would come, Zoom in through the one and then leave. And we found a lot of our members much prefer interacting face to face as well. Now, one of the things that I think we're the first out the stable for the Innovation Awards to get people actually back together. We had 270 people at Millennium Point for that in September last year. That had been a plan for the July, but obviously lockdown restrictions were still on then, so we retimed it for September. But that went very, very well. What we found with our members was there was a complete spectrum. So we had people who were very keen to say, I want to bring 20 people of my staff for a big party and a big night out. And at the other end, we had some members who said, well, actually, we've got a company policy. We can't travel into Birmingham unless it's urgent and business. So it's kind of the two extremes of people really wanting to get out and then people having policy that still made them cautious. So it's interesting.
You went straight into talking about your members. I'd like to bring us back to give the viewers, the people out there who don't know about your business and the model. Would you be able to give 2-3 minutes on that model, that business, what it is, how people can interact with it, how they understand it?
Sure, absolutely. So the technology supply chain is a no-cost membership for manufacturing, engineering and tech companies. And we connect people with the grants, fully funded support and new opportunities available to them. Because what we found is there is a lot of help out there that people just aren't aware of. In the West Midlands alone, there's tens of millions of pounds worth of support in terms of grant and consultancy work that companies can access, but they don't know about it. So what we found is is, having worked with my old PhD group, we found that they had support they could give. But then we found Aston had another 22 of these projects. A lot of these projects, they say Birmingham University, Coventry, Warwick, Wolverhampton, every university, pretty much every university has some of these projects. The thing is, most businesses don't know about them.
Wow.
So we decided to come up with this as a no-cost membership to help people kind of find every piece of support out there that is relevant to them. So what we do with people is they kind of go onto our website, they book a discovery call with me.
Can you give the name of the website?
Absolutely, technologysupplychain.co.uk. All one word, www.technologysupplychain.co.uk. If you go on that, you book a discovery call in my Calendly, in my diary. I'll spend about 30 minutes with you, find out about your business, and I'll refer typically to 10 to 14 different sources of grants and fully funded support that your business can benefit from. I had a lovely email last week from a manufacturer in the West Midlands that said, I'm working on these 8 projects that you've referred. I'm still working through your other referrals. Who knew how much support was available? Many thanks, Richard. Absolutely fantastic. So they're really pleased with that. So that's what we exist for. We don't charge our members anything. How we kind of finance ourselves is we do get money from universities to help them reach their targets. We have some very generous patrons, and we do have grants and the innovation awards as well, which kind of top up that. So we're a community interest company, as close as you can get to a charity without being a charity. So we're all about really kind of connecting people and helping people make the most of what's available. Also, we want to keep graduates in the area, get graduates into the right roles, because there's so many resources out there, so much potential that we just want to bring it all together so people can make the most of it.
And how many members do you have right now?
So we're getting on for about 1,500, just short of 1,500 at the moment.
Is there an objective, a target to grow that?
We want to be at least double by the end of this year, wouldn't we? About 3,000?
Yeah, it is, but it's got to be quality members.
Okay.
You know,
I was going to ask you about the criteria.
Yeah, so we don't just, although it's free membership at the lower level, there's a digital membership, and you'll see that possibly other membership organisations don't do that. We do that. So what we've got, we disseminate is free information, and we put it across there. What we've learned from some of our patrons who pay us around £10,000 a year, we send down to our free membership level and things like that. We've also got a training platform, so there's a host of training courses available on there that's free and things like that.
This is very dynamic, isn't it?
It is all about looking at the issues around there. So if I drift away from technology to look at the issues that are around the West Midlands, Birmingham specifically, there's 40% of our children are below the poverty line. So we want to affect generations 2 and 3 times ahead. And it's education. Education improves manufacturing, improves productivity, improves the economic climate and things like that. So it's about putting it back at the base level, which is why we sit as a CIC. But at the higher level, the skills and the contacts that we've got, we can deliver at the higher level for boards and things like that for companies that are international and local.
How do you how have you been getting your members?
Word of mouth. We don't. We're considering Richard's background as well, apart from being a mad scientist, and I use that term quite locally. He's marketing. So we market our members, we promote our members, we connect our members. We're not particularly good about raising our own profile. One, because we don't need to. It's word of mouth, sure. It's profile, it's reputation. That's where we get our members from. Fantastic.
And I know that there'll be lots of people out there who are listening to this today who maybe not in your catchment area. That criteria, is it a geographical region?
No. We're working internationally. So we're working with, we're across Africa at the moment, Germany, Australia we're speaking to, and we're dealing with some companies in India as well.
Wow. You two guys are very dynamic people. Is there a team of people that work with you that manage lots of the sort of the non-dynamic board level
there's at the moment there's 3 directors, but there's a whole team that sit behind us with specialisms and things like that. There's a lot of people that we'll refer into that are supporters, contractors into us around specialism and things like that. Whatever you need as a business is pretty much the focal point for us that we can deliver through that network.
I know the listeners will be having their own issues and problems on a day-to-day basis. What are the things that are very topical at the moment? I don't even want to prompt you because I've been picking up and having conversations about all kinds of things. It would be great to get from the absolute coalface what it is that you're seeing that people are struggling with right now.
I mean, if I pick up on the pandemic aspects and the mental health and things like that, it's the recruitment and everything else around finding the right people for the right jobs. It takes, if we think in terms, it takes 30 to 60 days to develop a new habit. So every one of us has got a new habit now, considering we started from the pandemic. So we all see, look and act differently to that. So your whole workforce now sees things differently. It's this, smart working. Is it appropriate? Is it the right thing? Absolutely, it's the right thing to do. Before that, I've been in businesses where you had to clock in, clock out, and you were told what time lunch was. Then it got a little bit fluid over certain times, 80s, 90s, the teens to do that.
Flex the time, yeah.
Now, you come and go as you like. So if you speak to some of the international, probably professional services, that they monitor when their staff log on and log off and things like that, because it's the lone working aspects and things like that. People are on at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Productivity's gone through the roof, but you can see they'll disappear for 3 or 4 hours during the day, which is fine. That's family time. They'll take the kids to school, they'll pick the kids up, they might go and watch a football game or something like that. They'll work at the weekend and make the hours up. But professionally minded people, they do that. And it's a way of changing our work culture for me, so that we start to do that in production, manufacturing, and different other works of life, I think. Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of the people we're talking to at the moment is a lot of their issues around recruitment and keeping staff and attracting the right staff. Because the thing, it's very hard to train an engineer with 20 years experience in 2 weeks. You unfortunately, you can't do it. No. So there's a real shortage out there, and I know, speaking to a lot of people, that is the challenge, is finding and keeping the right people. And on top of everything else as well, obviously supply chain issues, and obviously Brexit, and obviously getting stuff across the EU. So we've got all of that piled on top of that as well.
I know lots of the listeners will be listening to what you guys are saying and hanging on every word, as I am. For me, one of the areas that they'll be thinking about is that measurement, and we hear that old adage, what gets measured gets done. When you talk about that logging on, logging off, calculating the number of hours that you're physically working for an organisation, I know that we've had lots of questions sent in to us and to our team to ask that question. How do we do that? What sort of things, tools and tactics can business owners and controllers do within their businesses that help measure those things? Because that's, for them right now, is where do I turn to? I've never done this before. Somebody works from home. How do I know how many hours they're working? Do you have measurements?
I think it's if you can measure it, you can manage it. It's an old style of management, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the culture. So you've got to measure the productivity via the positive culture that you have in your organisation. The people are there because they want to be there. People don't leave businesses, they leave managers. Yeah. That's an old cliche. So there's 2 cliches there. You can measure it, you can manage it, and people don't leave businesses, they leave managers. It's around looking after your people to have the positive culture to deliver around that. Do I need to look at when somebody clocks on, when they clock off and stuff like that? Absolutely not. And I would shy away from that. I'd encourage anybody to do it. It's about employing the right people. It's project-based, application-based. It's a specific task. How long does it take to do that task? Are they professional enough to deliver that task? Well, yeah, of course they are. If they're not, they shouldn't be with you. If they're not, they're delivering. They're not delivering. They are delivering. It's looking at why they're in the catchment point between there. If they're not delivering, but they have done, there's something there. There's emotional attachment. There's some issues around that. If they need to look at the kids while they're in the nursery, let them do it. Put a camera up there. Put it there. If they need to work at the nursery and things like that, let them do that. If they want to have time off, don't let them sneak off. Let them tell you, I'm not going to be available at 3 o'clock this afternoon because I'm going to go and watch the sports day. Totally fine. But I'll be back online at 6, 7 o'clock, or when the kids have gone to bed tonight. That's totally acceptable. I don't need to be told that. Just do it. Make it work. Make it work. It's the culture. Yeah. All about the culture.
It's nurturing a trust environment.
Of course it is. Absolutely right.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's always about results and output at the end of the day. So you'd monitor the output as opposed to the hours. Yeah. I know somebody's developed software out there which monitors keystrokes and people's attention on your computer, but there's all types of things. Do you want to be that invasive? And would you stand over somebody like that if they were working in the workplace, staring at their screen to check they were constantly doing stuff? Because obviously people get up, go and have a coffee, do other things as well. So at the end of the day, provided the person has still got the same productivity they had previously. And as Paul quite rightly said, in a lot of cases, it has gone up.
I used to work for the Bibberline Group, and I was part of the Bibberline Group. My old manager was Mark Schroeder, quite an influential person in my life. And he had a mindset that he would send me away for 3 or 4 days to work on a project, but he'd send me to a hotel, or he'd send me abroad, he'd send me to a holiday, destination, and go, right, this is the project, this is the problem, go off and work on this project. I know that you'll come up with something else like that. So I'd fly away and I'd be in a different city, and then I'd be working away, come back, and he's like, how did you get on? Ta-da! Project solved. Brilliant. That's leadership. That's really using the skills that you've got, the attributes of your team to the nth degree. There's a ticket. Off you go to Milan for a few days. Just work on this for me. Yeah, totally fine. It works.
That's the power of investment and creative thinking, isn't it? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, 2022, we're a quarter in already. I mean, it's frightening how fast life goes. As we get up to our age, life seems to get faster. Can you give us a bit of a sort of quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 this next year and beyond? What is it looking like for you and your businesses?
Let's look at cyber. So at the moment, the phone, that old cliche, hasn't stopped ringing because obviously what's happening in Ukraine, Russia and everything else like that. It's all about cyber. We see missiles flying around and we see relatively small fatalities, but you can't measure the impact of the cyber, problems being caused around the world. So for the cyber, it hasn't stopped and it's going to ramp up.
Can you just drill down a little bit into the viewers? I mean, cyber is a small word, but the implications of that are huge. Could you just go back one step and just explain what it means to you guys? What does cyber mean to you so that our listeners can understand exactly what you're talking about?
So we're sitting in two worlds, technology supply chain, and Cyber Risk Score is one of our companies. Richard will do his explanation as a marketer.
Sure. So cybersecurity is massive. As we know, this is a big thing. We're seeing Russian attacks. We're seeing hacks going on. I know from Hiscox that a small business is successfully hacked every 19 seconds. And that was before what's going on in the Ukraine at the moment. So it's a massive thing. And what we're finding is a lot of companies spend a lot of money looking after it, but people are then getting hacked through their supply chain. So what happens is big company spends a lot of money, millions on cybersecurity, and what happens then is they've got a small supplier who they work with and they hack into the small supplier to get into the big company.
Wow.
So what we're trying to do is raise awareness with the bigger companies and with the smaller companies that you need to look after cybersecurity as well, because you're becoming more of a target, because they know perfectly well they can't get into a big company because it's that well defended. But if you get into the smaller one, then you can get into the bigger one that
like a
way.
Trojan horse.
Yeah, exactly.
So our mindset now is around, you would credit score a company to work with a company as to financial transitions with them. You going forward, we want to cyber risk a company as to whether your data is going to go adrift or not. And you can manage that and you can do that going forward. And you can decide whether you want to trade with a company. Once you've broken the firewall, once the emails have gone backwards and forwards and things like that, you're vulnerable to that. So you're managing your supply chain. So we've created a product that tells you where the cyber risk and the cyber vulnerabilities of your supply chain sit, and who isn't performing well and who should be performing well because of what they've got and what they do. So there's a number of different organisations that we've looked at that give strategic advice around some of the issues that we're looking at. So cameras managing cities, security, threats around different things around, supporting police, terrorism advice and things like that. All of these are particularly vulnerable, but you can look at some smaller businesses that are particularly secure, and we're trying to inform, educate and level up all of the cyber posture of the companies that we deal with and the companies that you would want to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say, for a lot of small businesses, cybersecurity is complex, confusing and costly. So people go, I don't understand it. It seems like it's going to cost me a fortune. I'm just going to hope it doesn't impact me. So they'll get hacked and they don't know. because once somebody's in your software, unless you go looking for them, you're not going to know they're there. So we kind of say, look, you've got to make it simple, straightforward and affordable for people to do. And that's how we'll get smaller businesses to actually increase their cyber posture. So we developed Cyber Risk Score. So what that does is it's just like a credit score for your organization's cybersecurity. So it'll scan your website and it gives you a score out of 1,000. Now that's as simple as we could possibly make it.
Sure.
Anybody can understand it. Score out of 1,000. And we have like a color code that, so it'll be green if it's above 900, it'll be yellow if it's above 750, it'll be orange if it's under that, and red if it's kind of in the 500s. And says immediately to a CEO or the business owner, you need to do something or you're fine. It will tell you which you are. You can then go down to the next level where we make it straightforward. And what we do is list all the vulnerabilities we found on your website, tell you how severe they are, so how much they're affecting your score, and then tell you how many times they occur. So you can actually say, well, actually, these high ones I need somebody to fix now. These medium ones can wait a bit, and these low ones I'll worry about when I've got a little bit more money in the bank. And what that allows the person to do is then go out and actually tender to see who can make the fixes for them, because we don't do the fixes. And that's very deliberate because we want to stay independent, so people know that the report is the report. We've not added in vulnerabilities that aren't there or overstated them. So you can then tender out. Whoever you tender it to can then go into the system. They go to the third level down. That tells them what the problem is, the solution, and this is all following international standards, and exactly where on the website it occurs, so then they can make the changes. And what happens is you get a new report and a new score each month, just like your credit score. So you can actually see these changes have been made, my score is improving, and it's just $44.95 a month, which makes it very affordable, even for sole traders.
Wow. That's very comprehensive. And in terms of the criteria, again, for businesses out there, is it right the way from a one-man band to the biggest business out there?
Absolutely. So you'd have the one-man bands would be looking at how can I secure my website. The huge businesses, though, it's more about them looking at their supply chain.
Okay.
So what they'd be able to do is send, request the score from their suppliers, and we're working on some functionality this year, so they'll be able to send them an invite saying, if you accept this invite, I can see your cyber risk score, and it'll update each month. So then they can plot out the supply chain and see the numbers. They can't see the report. They'd see the numbers and the color code to know who's secure and who needs to do a bit of work. And talking to a lot of the bigger companies, they've said they'd want to set their own figures on what information they'd happily share. So it might be you have to be above 700 if you want to supply us with anything, but if we're going to share some confidential information with you, we're going to share some financial information, then you might need to be above 900. But everybody said to us we'd set our own scores. You've got a score and you've got your guidelines, but we'd have our own thing of saying we want to have that. And we think this is going to become more and more the thing as companies realise they're exposed through their supply chain of smaller suppliers, and it's therefore incumbent on them to say, actually, I can see your score, can you please improve that?
And can people access it through the www that you gave earlier?
So that's cr-score.com, www.cr-score.com.
Okay, and people can go on that website, access that, and request some kind of conversation, some kind of callback.
Yeah,
email.
You can go on there. You can actually sign up, get a scan on your website, and each month you will get an email saying, "Here's your new report. Please log in to get your new score."
What works quite well is if you're a board member as MD and you're employing an internal team to manage your cyber security, your cyber posture and things like that, we're fiercely independent. So the report would come directly to you and it would give you validation of whether things are going well or not so well. So at £540 a year, it's ideal as a personal response to what's the investment of the company's putting into.
So when people take out insurances, is this helping them with their relationships with their insurers, because actually it's making their business a little bit more safer?
Yeah, so we are moving forward with insurance companies, underwriters at this precise moment that will require evidence of your cyber posture and things like that, and we're ideally placed for that product and for that support. So yes, and watch this space, it will be insurance led within the next 12 months, 2 years, easily. The other thing let's consider is that companies' house are probably going to request your annual returns as to where your posture is going to be and your accountability around cyber. So governmental are clearly taking it seriously, because we know that on a day-to-day basis you've only got to watch the news and things like that. But actually the way they'll deliver that and manage it will be around companies' social returns and things like that. So that's highly likely to come in the next couple of years as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're going to see the insurance industry, I think, very much, as Paul says, leading the way on this. Because the easiest way to think about cyber is to think about physical security. So I say to a lot of people, you might have home insurance, and I'm sure you do, but if you left your front door and back door open and went on holiday, you're not going to be covered. And it was going to be the same with cyber insurance. They're going to say, have you took some basic steps to protect your business? And I think that's where it's going to be. Previously, a lot of insurance companies have based the premium purely on turnover and number of employees, where obviously that's a very crude measure which doesn't really relate to your cybersecurity at all. And I think it's going to become more, actually, can we see that you've done these things? Obviously the government have got cyber essentials. We think cyber risk score plugs nicely onto that, because that doesn't talk about vulnerabilities on your website, and it's nice to have a score as well. But as Paul quite rightly says, the government is pushing forward on making more cybersecurity in the country. So, because we're great at digital stuff, but it's really important that you protect that.
Wow. I'm guessing, and this just is just trying to extend the conversation further, that our teams that we work with on a daily basis, they're out there at the coalface. Obviously, they've had issues through the pandemic, through working from home. That again adds an extra level of risk to a business because of the data that is used, collected, managed, reported on, deleted, stored, all of those things. And so is that very much within the framework that you work with in terms of helping the businesses out there?
I think it's the realisation of any data that's been transferred.
Of any data.
And we all start talking about the cloud now. The cloud a few years ago was the place to be. You need to be secure, you send it to the cloud. That's changing the mindset of that now. So it's ground-based servers, and we're coming away from the cloud. So we've done a full, 180 on that point and things like that. You're still moving data around from point to point, and it's accessing between that, and it's a vulnerability around that. So if you've got somebody working at home, it comes into, behavioural traits. Who else uses the machine? What else happens on the machine? You're looking at social media, you're looking at your personal things, your personal emails on that machine. There's vulnerabilities all around that, whereas it's a work-based machine, you don't have that. So the current climate, we're working from home, this animation of people working at home is a risk. Of course it all is. But bearing in mind, we're looking at where the world sits at the moment. Let's talk about China, Ukraine, Russia, and all of this sort of edginess that's happening. Russia's been cited for hacking, China's been cited for hacking. But let's be honest, I think, we all do it. Everybody's hacking everybody, everybody's shaking everybody, and it's that see who can go up the tree the highest. We're all doing it, and it's the future. It's not missiles, it's going to be cyber. That's the way that the world's going to change.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Paul raises numerous excellent points there. And I think with cybersecurity, as he quietly says, people tend to forget it isn't just the machine, it isn't just your laptop, your mobile phone, it's the communication channel that you're talking on. And I know for a lot of companies, it is a threat is when somebody's doing work stuff on their own device, which pretty much everybody does. They've got their iPhones or they've got their Samsung. So if you're picking up the email and it's already been hacked through an app that person's downloaded, how then do you protect it? And it causes a real headache. It's something companies have to look at.
So, if you talk around car design, obviously a background in that, to get a car into production, it's around £1 billion is the figure. At the most vulnerable point around that is data transfer. So I'm talking about moving data all around the world and things like that. All of that can be hacked. So you could have spent, $750 million designing, taking it up to the conceptual stage for that to be taken. And it does happen. Ironically, cars appear, in the Middle East, Far East, very similar to the cars that are launched over here. It's happened to Jaguar, it's happened to Aston Martin, McLaren. They've all been cloned and things like that. And these come to the car shows, all of a sudden, functionality and features of the vehicles are on somebody else's car. Obvious where that's come from.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a very interesting story I heard the other day. What hackers are doing now at the moment is they're hacking into those companies you mentioned. But what they're doing is they're going to your CAD machines, your computer-aided design, and they will tweak your design so it's less efficient than their design. Yeah. You won't know they've changed it. It's just when it's done, it's kind of less efficient, so they can sell more of their products. So you would never know they'd been in and made those little changes.
So the sophistication of that type of cyber attack is so sophisticated to the nth degree. I know our viewers will be saying, well, you know what, at the basic level, I really need to start thinking about this. And actually, this is a board level item on the agenda, isn't it? This is not a tactic that maybe we'll throw £1,000 at. This is top strategic.
Of course.
How do we put this across?
There's two types of people or organisations, those that have been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked. And that's it.
Wow. Yeah,
that's it.
There's a very nice framework out there called the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and you'll find that's a universal standard. It says there's 14 different levels a hacker goes through, from initial kind of reconnaissance, finding out about your company, all the way through to the 14th level would be ransomware or causing mischief or taking down your systems. What we say to people is it's much, much easier and much cheaper to stop people getting in than it is to then find them and kick them out. In the same way, it's easier to stop somebody getting into your home than finding the burglar in your house and evicting them from it. Sure. So that's where the cybersecurity gets expensive and costly, because you've got to find out, well, somebody's in, but I don't know where they are, they're hidden somewhere.
Wow.
And now I need to work out what damage they've done even after they've kicked them out. How do I know if they've tweaked stuff, changed stuff? So what we do with Cyber Risk Score, it's very much about helping people to stop that initial access. So figuratively, what we're doing is helping companies to shut their windows and close the front door and lock their front door. So it makes it harder for people to get in.
Wow, amazing. So one of the things we were talking about earlier in the corridor, we were talking about the Innovation Awards. Would you just give us 2 minutes on what that is, where it's going to be, and what it's all about, please?
Sure. So the Innovation Awards, we first ran that last year. We developed this because we know there's a lot of innovation going on in the UK. We're an amazing country. We do some amazing stuff. And especially with COVID and Brexit and all these other factors coming in, people are having to innovate. And we really wanted to recognise, acknowledge and reward innovation. So we looked at various people that we kind of thought are doing some amazing stuff, and we decided we wanted to recognise innovators in some manufacturing innovation of the year, engineering innovation of the year, tech innovation of the year, services innovation of the year, and this year sustainable innovation of the year. So we got those awards, but we also want to recognise all those people out there doing an amazing job of supporting innovation, because innovation doesn't happen on its own. It's generally a team thing. So we've got awards there for businesses, whether that's coaches, consultants, accountants, solicitors who help their clients innovate. And we've got awards as well for universities who've got amazing funded projects to help companies as well. So they can also go in for the Innovation Awards. So we have nominations are open until the 31st of March. And then we have the event itself is on the 15th of September at Millennium Point in Birmingham City Centre. Sold out 3 weeks in advance last year. And it's an amazing night. We've got some amazing speakers. It's going to be a great night as well.
So for me, it was around rewarding and profiling some of the organisations, individuals that really were in front of us. So if we look at Birmingham on its own, there was 11 incubator hubs. And we would look at some of the companies, the people that were innovating and coming up with these new tech ideas and new ideas, manufacturing and all kinds of sector. And we just went from day to day going, wow, everybody needs to know about these people. We need to profile these people. What's the best way of profiling these people? First one is bringing them on a podcast with you, obviously. The second one is the Innovation Awards. So put it up there and celebrate the successes and things like that. And that's what we've done. Hugely successful last year. We think we've got a Paul Scully, the minister. So we've got the minister looking at us going, hey guys, what you're doing is really cool. I'm not going to quite quote what he said, but it was along the lines of, why aren't we doing more of this? So it centres around the Midlands, but with a national reach. So if there's somebody out there that's doing some good, that needs to be profiled, bring them along, bring them to the awards, nominate them, and we'll profile them.
And how would people know how and where the awards are.
Yeah, so if you go to tiawards.co.uk, so it's tiawards.co.uk, you can find all the information there, and you can nominate yourself, you can nominate your company, you can nominate others. It takes all of about 3 minutes, I think, to do that.
And the other way of doing it is to reach out to us on LinkedIn, connect with us both, and if you want any advice, any support, reach out to us personally, and we'll do that for you. We'll support you.
Professor Paul Cadman, Dr. Richard Fallon, it's been absolutely insightful. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. Until next time, the British Business Podcast.